Happy Sunday, my friends. Welcome to the What is True podcast in conjunction with my friends, the Apollo Detectives, which is led by the legend himself, Mr. Marcus Allen, Jared White, Mr. Robert Williams, Scott. Randy should be joining us here soon, very shortly, probably in perhaps an hour. But thank you for everyone that made it out today and that will listen throughout the week via podcast audio format. Today we are going to be covering a show that was done not too long ago on the Danny Jones podcast. Featured Bart Sibrel versus Charlie Duke, who is a former astronaut, and we're gonna have a little fun dissecting it today. I did send out a little bit of an invite to Mr. Cy Danman, or however you say his name. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see if he joins us at some point. I did the same thing as I did with the other gentleman, and he joined us. So we'll see if Simon Dan takes the bait. And if you are listening, Mr. Simon Dan, it'll be fun. We aren't rude. We won't be yelling or cursing. We'll treat you with respect. So the invitation is out there, my man. If you want to join us, message me on Twitter, and I'll send you the link. All right. Mr. Marcus, how have you been, sir?
I've been well, thank you. Gearing up for Christmas, doing all those Christmas cards. It's a bit
Absolutely.
It's a bit expensive sending Christmas cards overseas now from the UK. So just to wish you all a happy Christmas. If we omit it in the end. I'm sure it's nice down in Australia. It's nice and sunny.
Bit too sunny. Bit too sunny. It's either too sunny or too rainy. One or the other.
Yeah, it's a bit snowy where you are, isn't it, Robert?
Yes, it certainly is, but the temperatures come up a little bit, and there's very little snow down here. It's all up on the mountains, so we're in good shape.
Well, it's very wet in the UK at the moment. It's been raining for about 3 days. I don't think we're going to get snow at Christmas, so no white Christmas this year. Again, it's a bit sad, but there we are, a little lump of rocks out in the northwest corner of Europe. We don't often get snow. Lots of people coming over in little boats, though. That's the exciting thing. Could watch them coming in. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there was lots of snow in Europe when we were over there in 1971, I believe.
Yeah.
It was quite a bit of snow over there in West Germany, Niederschopfheim. But
yeah, can be quite snowy in Germany.
Yeah.
We in the astrophysics community got quite a big snowball, if you know what I mean. We had the recent passing of 3I Atlas, the interstellar comet, which should be very interesting. Very good data to yield from this. I believe it is the third interstellar comet we've seen so far.
Really? And so what's the full name of the Atlas, the astronomical place where
I forget off the top of my head, but I believe it's named after the observatory. Here we go. It's the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System Station.
Oh, that sounds good.
As the name suggests, obviously, it's to look out for any potential extinction event asteroids that might be a problem to Earth. Fortunately, this one just breezes through the solar system and out again. Never to be seen again.
I know where it went. It actually hit Scott. The 3I Atlas made an appearance in our last video, and it hit Scott on the shoulder and started a fire, and all he did was sit there and laugh.
Well, maybe somebody will work out what it actually is. I think being a comet is about the normal thing.
Maybe it's communicating with our whales.
You reckon?
Like in Star Trek.
I know there's been a few people who've been claiming that it's an alien spacecraft. I don't really buy into that nonsense, but we all are looking for what could potentially be another potential candidate for signs of maybe microbial life. You want to look at the infrared signatures and whatnot, see what kind of molecules it contains, if it contains any biosignatures. It's it's always very exciting to look and see what we can find.
Yeah. It's always
Well,
interesting.
if I could just say a couple of things on the show that Bart was on with Danny Jones and Charlie Duke. One thing I would have loved to have done was ask Charlie a couple of things. Why would you have taken the buddy pack? Now, that was the little unit that was on top of the PLSS unit. And that had a big, well, not really that big, but it had a 6,000 PSI worth of oxygen inside of that cylinder and that round tank, which means that there was two of them because there was two astronauts. Why on earth did those guys throw that out the airlock when you could have used that to save your life? If that would have happened in Apollo 13, they would have all been dead pretty quick. Oxygen leaks.
Yeah.
The other question I would have liked to ask
before you get going though, Rob, 1 second.
Yeah.
This is your answer right here.
Okay. So, I don't understand the purpose of this conversation.
So
You could literally turn it into a drinking contest. Take a shot every time he says, "What is the point in this conversation?"
What is the purpose of this discussion? So for those that missed it, and maybe listening on audio, I just played former astronaut Charlie Duke saying one of the many times that he said throughout the entire podcast, what is the purpose of this discussion?
Well, I think he was gaslighting. Do you think he was gaslighting Bart? Because he was doing that quite a lot, trying to get Bart's goat.
Well,
throughout that show.
My thoughts in having, my father get dementia this year, I feel he's probably showing some signs of that. And so I think he was legitimately serious when he's saying he was forgetting what he was even there for. And I don't think he was playing an act.
There was at least 10 occasions when he acted surprised that Bart Sibrel doubted the Apollo missions, and I have my own theory for that, and it's basically along the lines of what you just said and stuff. I think his hippocampus might be dying. His hippocampus is basically the part of the brain that converts short-term memory into long-term memory, which would explain why all the long-term memories he's already made, prior to the hippocampus dying. They would still be stored in his noggin, but anything new, he wouldn't be able to convert that into long-term. There's actually an interesting case study. Have you guys ever heard of the tragic story of Henry Molaison, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly? Molaison, I think his name was.
Yeah, you sent a link. I had a quick look at it. The surgery that he had, though, I think it made matters worse, didn't it?
Yeah, what happened was, he suffered a head injury at a childhood age during a bicycle accident, if I recall correctly, and it left him with catastrophic seizures. He would suffer like at least 10 or 12 seizures a day. He constantly couldn't be left alone. He had to have somebody, by his side, ready to help try to constrain him, try to help him overcome his seizures. He tried, by the age of 27, they tried all the types of drugs to try and treat it, but nothing worked. And so the surgeons decided, okay, we'll have to remove the hippocampus. You see, in those days, they didn't really know much about what made the brain tick. They just knew, okay, you can live without this part or that part because so-and-so had lost that part of his brain in a car crash or this or that, so we know it's safe to cut that part out. Now, normally, the way it works is, when that seizure happens, it's caused by an excessive amount of the neurotransmitter glutamate. Okay, and so too much glutamate can lead to an overstimulation of the receptors and dangerously high levels of calcium released into the brain. And they knew that the hippocampus was the worst offender for generating this glutamate. Now, normally what they would do is they would remove a third or maybe half of the hippocampus, but in the case of this Henry fellow, they decided to remove the whole thing. So that got rid of his seizures, but only after they removed it, they found out what it actually did.
This is something, because when I was watching Charlie, I made a few little notes when I was watching him and Bart go at it. especially when Bart kept reminding him, well, you only said that 20 minutes ago. Well, 20 minutes ago, you just said that you remembered, but now you say you're not. And that was only 20 minutes ago. The conversation we had, you even remembered that from 10 years ago. So he's going on like this. And I'm watching Charlie's reaction to this. Charlie is gaslighting Bart, trying to get his goat because he's smirking. He's watched Charlie smirk and tilt his head like it's like a little child trying to bring the needle.
Can I say something?
Like I said, he's either
real quick. Hold up, Jared. My dad is going through dementia this year, and he does the same thing. He's a different.
I've dealt with a family member. I've dealt with a family member for years with dementia until she finally died. So I understand that. But what I'm saying is when he was, I'm not talking about before. I'm talking about when they were somewhere in the middle of that conversation, and that's when he kept doing that to Bart. I get it when he said, "Oh, I don't remember," or "Did we just say that?" or things like that. Yeah, I agree with you there for sure.
He couldn't even get the moon rocks. He at one point said 200 pounds of moon rocks, and then another time 600 pounds of moon rocks.
Oh, Scott,
his biggest
you know what, Wheezy? You're right. Because Scott, what did he say about the crater there when they were coming in? And that crater was remember that?
He said as they were orbiting the moon, they spotted the crater right away and where they were going to land. So they knew they were on course. And then later on, he said, well, the crater's only about 300 feet across.
That was South Ray crater he was talking about, right?
Yeah, I believe that's the one that he was talking about, that they had it. So I looked up the crater, and of course, it's about the same size as Meteor Crater in width and depth on the thing. But when you look at any images of the moon, can you tell me which crater is the crater you're going to land on? Like if you're orbiting around, you're 60 miles up and you see a whole bunch of craters in front of you, you're going to be able to pick that one out that you're going to land on. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, unless in their simulation, they had a label on it, like moon rock has a label on that says it's a moon rock, then you know that that's the right crater because it's got a label. When they come around, they see, oh, there's the label. I mean, that's
I think they would have had some. They probably would have had some printed maps with the crater labels on them and stuff like that. So I know that they had a whole bunch of gigantic scale models, basically showing, okay, here's this crater, here's that crater, all mapped from the pre-Apollo imagery, of course. That's what they say, how they knew where this crater is, where that crater is, and so forth. I think you guys have discussed those models on past shows in the past, so
yep.
Yeah, but how did they all get labeled before anybody got there to actually look at them, to give them a name?
Well, we know that they had pre-Apollo spacecraft, unmanned missions, of course, to take in, of course, even the big ones that we can see here from Earth through a telescope. Even we've been labeling those for a long time now. I don't remember when they started naming these things, but there's obviously the famous one that stands in my mind is Tycho crater. Obviously, that's named after Tycho Brahe, and the last naked eye astronomer.
Yeah, but all these tiny little craters that we can't even pick out from Earth, right? I just put that up there because we were discussing. You can watch this video. They're taking the rabies virus, they're modifying it, and what they're able to do with the rabies virus is restructure the neural pathways in the brain.
Oh, okay. It's a long video. I was going to ask you, Scott.
Yeah, no, it's just something. I just put it up there for reference. You can watch it after.
Okay.
When you're talking about Alzheimer's and everything else.
Yeah.
This is an interesting technology, taking one of the most deadly viruses on the planet, modifying it, and using it to rebuild the neural pathways in the brain. But you can also target certain areas of the brain and remap it to create new memories.
Are you suggesting that they've used this on the astronauts?
No, I'm not saying that. This is new technology, just happened.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. But when you were talking about Alzheimer's and stuff like this, and people that
Well, those are
have
the two
different
options that we've got.
neurological problems, this seems to be a pathway that may fix most of the problems.
So going
so
back
that's
to
it.
going back to the debate there, I listened to the whole thing twice. Actually, I listened to it again yesterday. I listened to it the day it came out, and reading some of the comments on the Danny Jones YouTube video, there was a lot of people that were pro NASA, and a lot of them were a bit upset with how Bart Sibrel was a bit aggressive with Mr. Charlie Duke. But it occurred to my mind, these same people that were upset with how Bart Sibrel went after Charlie Duke are the same people that cheer on MC Toon when he does his, little outbursts and gets aggressive. They're okay when MC Toon does it, but then when Bart Sibrel slaps back, now it's a big issue, and and it seems to bother them. That was one of the funny observations that I found out. And he, his biggest evidence, if you listen to all 3 hours, his biggest evidence was, I went to the moon and I collected moon rocks. That was his biggest piece of evidence. And one of the things I've been saying for a while now is like that's not a very good piece of evidence. I mean, in David McGowan's book, he goes over how some rocks had been found to be petrified pieces of petrified wood. We know that during World War II, the Nazis went to Antarctica and picked up some moon rock. So that whole claim that he picked up moon rocks is not very good. What do you think, Mr. Marcus Allen? You have a piece of moon rock yourself, but what are your thoughts on that?
I have a piece of moon rock. Come and get it, guys. If you want a piece of moon rock, here it is. It's not petrified wood. Anyway, yeah, I didn't think Bart was particularly aggressive towards Charlie Duke. I thought Charlie Duke was being a bit dissembling about what he was saying. He claimed that he'd walked on the moon. Well, how do we know that he'd walked on the moon? He says so. But so do all the other astronauts. They all say they walked on the moon. They have to say it. Because if they said they didn't walk on the moon, all hell will break loose. They have to maintain the story of landing humans on the moon. We keep asking for evidence that this actually happened. And most people will refer to the photographs of the landing sites. Well, we've looked at that, and Jarrah's done a very good deconstruction of the three-legged lander. I mean, the Apollo landers were 4 legs, not 3 legs. Oh, very convenient that it was covered by a shadow, I believe was one explanation. There was no shadow covering any of the legs on Apollo. So they haven't yet produced definitive, independently verifiable, factual evidence that humans have landed on the moon. They say they have. That doesn't mean to say it happened. And seeing as NASA stands for never a straight answer, as we keep being told, I think
Can we see that moon rock, Mr. Marcus Allen? Let's put you on the big screen there.
Oh, look, yeah, I'm on the big screen. Hello, guys. Nice to see you, big screen.
Let's see that rock again, if you don't mind.
Oh, here we go. All right, here's the rock. Bit of moon rock.
Yeah,
That's the real
Come and get
thing.
it.
You can tell.
Come
Now,
and get it.
Come and get it, guys. Because as a private citizen, I'm not supposed to own pieces of the American government's property. If it's not a piece of moon rock, then prove it. I say it's a piece of moon rock. That's all NASA says. They've got moon rock. I've got moon rock. What does that prove? Proves that I've got a piece of rock, moon rock. It looks very like the other pieces of moon rock we've seen pictures of. It's called breccia, Breccia. It's an accumulation of rock. That's what happens. It's got pieces of quartz. It's got a piece of feldspar in it, a piece of mica. It's quite a nice piece of rock. Obviously, it's been handled quite a bit, so you can't test it really. But if I say it's a piece of moon rock, nobody's ever disproved it. Come and get it, NASA. No, just to go back to the interview, I don't know if you can call it an interview. Danny Jones chatting with Bart Sibrel, chatting with Charlie Duke. I suspect that Charlie Duke only agreed to come on if he wasn't challenged. I mean, he's 91, we're told. Charlie Duke, okay, not much older than I am. A few years older, but not much. Doesn't mean to say that because he says he landed on the moon. There we go. There's a picture of the three-legged lander. Well, I've heard of Photoshop too. Doesn't mean to say it's a real picture. Now, if you've got a camera in a lunar reconnaissance orbiter, which this was supposed to be taking the pictures of it, that can see something on the lunar surface when it's been the lunar reconnaissance orbiter launched in 2009, was brought down to 15 miles above the lunar surface. How come that's the best they can do with the camera equipment they have on board, which can identify an object less than 3 feet across from orbit, from 60 miles up? They bring it down to 15 miles. They should be able to identify the lander and all the details around it, but they haven't. They just say it's the lander. Jarrah says it's not.
Just to quickly correct you, that's actually a photo from the Chandrayaan-2, the Indian space probe. I actually just posted a picture in the chat here. I've been a bit concerned by some of the copies of this image that have been floating around on the internet, because somebody has the pictures that appeared in this French magazine. I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation if I try, but basically, if you look at the one on the bottom, there was what was first released in a live stream that they had done, right? And we had to wait until they finally released the raw picture. And if you want to zoom in on the one on the top there, the top is the raw picture. You can see it still resembles a three-legged lander, a three-legged surveyor spacecraft. Yeah. What the magazine in question was called, what was it called? I got the website up here. Here we go. Ciel and E-Space. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but basically this is a French astronomy magazine. They published a copy of it that had been brightened and tweaked, and God only knows what else done to it, just to blur the details in with the surrounding terrain, to basically get it as far from the raw image as possible. There have been variations of that appearing online and stuff. I felt compelled to share the raw picture.
Yeah.
Anyways, getting back to the subject of the moon rocks, so Charlie Duke, I cannot tell you enough how much I wished I was on the program with Bart and Duke and stuff like that, because I felt having the geology degree, I felt like I was the one who can challenge the things he brings up. He kept talking about the what he called the radiation signatures. By this, he would be referring to the cosmic ray exposure ages. What that refers to is basically when a rock, or any kind of rock, doesn't matter where it comes from, when it's in space, as it's floating through space, or if it's sitting on the surface of a planet or a moon, it's constantly bombarded by solar winds, by solar flare particles, and of course cosmic ray particles. And because we know how many particles there are passing through this area of space at a given time, we can look at we see X number of particles in there, and we use that to calculate it's been in space for this many years or that many years. Now they were, first of all, if it was collected as a meteorite, then a meteorite would obviously show the same radiation-induced isotopes, same radiation signatures. And if they originated from Earth, there is a way to simulate this. In fact, let me just share this link in the description, in the chat. Sorry, I should say. There we go. I've just sent you a link in the private chat if you want to pull that up, Wheezy. Yes. Okay. This is a an article from 2000, basically describing how they simulated cosmic ray exposure ages, basically by putting a a stone sample, a gabbro, in the path of a particle accelerator. The accelerator is called Saturn because it's a circular accelerator, and basically they accelerated the protons at a flux of about 1.32 by 10 to the 14 particles per square centimeter over 6 days, and they managed to simulate an exposure age of 1.6 million years. They simulated a exposure age of 1.6 million years in just 6 days. Right? They all, by extension, they also put a piece of steel in there, acting as a iron meteorite, and they repeated the process over 12 days using a flux of 2.45 by 10 to the 14 particles per square meter, and simulated a cosmic ray exposure age of 3 million years. Now, just for comparison, the Apollo 16 samples are reported to have cosmic ray exposure ages between 2 million and 50 million years. So if we were to repeat the same process for, obviously, the first scenario, that's close enough to the younger cosmic ray exposure ages of 2 million years. Okay, to simulate a cosmic ray exposure age of 50 million years, you'd have to expose the rock to about up to 200 days, in this particle accelerator. So this demonstrates that we can, simulate the radiation signatures, as Duke put it. Okay, you can stop sharing now. And actually, let me get another link. The Apollo 16 samples, in particular, they're notorious for their rust content. And the reason this is important is because when an igneous rock first crystallizes, when it first forms, the only iron that it contains is either metallic iron or ferrous iron, FeO. Okay, when you expose the rock to air and water for a long time, all that iron that's in there starts to convert to rust. Okay, now the previous Apollo missions, up Apollos 11 to 15, they had some rust here, some rust there. The Apollo 16 samples were particularly notorious because they contained abundant rust. Let me just share a link in the chat. Okay, this is a moon rock study from 1982, specifically on the Apollo 16 samples. Can you share it? Can we share the picture up there? Is it coming? Okay, yes, great. This is a what is this? This is rust and stribosite in Apollo 16 Highlands. Yes,
that's probably why they came to Canada to look for these rocks, because in the shield, this is what type of material they're going to find here. I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah. Okay. If you go to the third page there, where it's labeled as what do they call it on this page? 255. That's it. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's on its side there. If you can turn I'm not sure if you can turn the screen clockwise, but basically, this is a list of all the different rock specimens they looked at from Apollo 16, and they labeled them as either having absent rust or trace, or present or abundant. Okay, and I counted all of these samples, and a whopping 82 of the samples had rust in them. 20 of them contained abundant ferric iron, abundant rust. Okay, now that's telling in and of itself, because these, as I said, you can't get this kind of rust on a rock unless you expose it to air and water for a long time. This demonstrates that these rocks have been in the atmosphere. And interestingly enough, let me just get this one here. I'll just share that in the chat as well. Okay, now NASA, they have what's called the Lunar Sample Compendium, which is basically a list of all the different rock samples. Each rock sample has its own number. Like this one here is called Rusty Rock for obvious reasons. Now let's see, on page 4. On page 4, NASA expresses doubt over this being a result of contamination. That was usually their go-to excuse for next page down. Actually, slow it down a bit. Yeah. Just go down just so you can see the text. A bit further down. No. On that page you're on. The page you're on. Yeah, just scroll down so we can see the text. Okay, yep, that should be it. Okay, now they write here, it is possible that anhydrous metal salts, chlorides, in 66095, this is the sample number in question, combined with moisture in the LM, CM, tropical Pacific, and or individual terrestrial laboratory, yielding a terrestrial-like hydrogen and oxygen isotopic signatures. However, it is difficult to see how moisture penetrated the sample to rust the internal metal grains. They go on to say, although the numerous Apollo 16 rocks exhibit some rust around metallic iron grains, 66095 is unusual is that it has abundant evidence of alteration. Alteration is found on the interior as well as on the surface. In thin sections, the thin grey margins to the metallic iron grains indicate rusting in situ. The brown stain extends into the silicates surrounding the iron grains. It is difficult to believe that this is the result of terrestrial alteration. So right there, NASA themselves are casting doubts on this being the contamination. That would usually be their go-to response. When they first got all the rock samples back, they all contained water, up to about 1,000 parts per million of water. And they would say, there can't be water on the moon because it's got no atmosphere, it would easily boil away. It must be contamination. That was always their excuse for the thing. Now they're finding rust in the rock, which is another telltale sign that the water is there to begin with. And so, hey guys,
Yeah,
there's
you want to
something
hear
wrong
another
here.
one?
But they,
Huh?
yeah, what's that?
You know what? Just looking here, there was a fella in the comments that was asking about this. He says, how much do you think it would cost for a gram of moon rock? I just looked it up. $300,000 per gram as of 2024. That's US. You see, so can you imagine how much money that little rock in Marcus's hand is worth?
Yeah, weighs about 200, weighs about 250 grams, this piece.
He's rich. I'm going to be partying with Mr. Marcus Allen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anybody want to take home?
And then there was another one here. This pilot, Steve, had a question for Jera. Didn't you calculate the size of the footprints from the LRO? And they would have been huge. Oh, would they have been huge from your research?
Yeah, what I was about was I did a video called LRO Tracking the Tracks, in which I I took the famous bootprint photo of from Apollo 11, famous picture of Aldrin's boot, shrunk it down to the size it should be in the LRO pictures. A whole trail of them barely shows up. I found I had to put them all over several rows consistently side by side to try and make it appear. And if you want to look that up, it's called Moonfaker LRO Tracking the Tracks. And so that was it was about. And it's interesting to note in the Chandrayaan 2 picture from Apollo 11, there are no tracks showing.
Jared,
I said it's interesting in the picture.
Moonfaker
tracking the tracks.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a whole series of videos on the LRO pictures. I've been meaning to make one on the Chandrayaan 2 picture and stuff, but I got an article about that on Ollis. Anyways, it's interesting to note that the picture that the Indians released, it showed no tracks at the Apollo 11 site. It just makes you wonder. But getting back to this topic of the...
Did you want part
of the
2 of that video? Or you're just telling people to search it on your channel?
I have a full version because the part 2 it was completely just bomb voted by haters. I have no idea where all the haters come from, but let me just get the full version of it. In the beginning, it was like a 10-15 minute upload for YouTube video, so I had to split everything up into parts. And so nowadays you can upload them in a complete form. Let me just see if I can find the full part of it. Where is it? Unfortunately, things don't really show up in search engines anymore. Hang on, they don't show up in search engines anymore unless you're searching on your own channel. It seems.
Yeah, I found it. They're just long videos. One's 10 minutes, and then the other one is over 10 minutes. So I was wondering if you had like a specific Timestamp.
Well,
you wanted me to hit.
it was I believe it was part 2 when I showed the bootprint trail experiment stuff. But here's the full video if anybody's interested in having a look. I posted that in the private chat. If you want to just bring that up, you don't have to play. You can just show the opening frame and stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone just joined us. 1 second. All right, so here is the video. Can you guys hear that?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, I
crap.
can hear it.
Okay. Pulp Fiction, starring Jared White.
Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah, it's a
We're
good
watching
one.
You can
a
stop it.
video from Jared White's channel called Moonfaker LRO Tracking.
This
Yeah.
is the third
The whole video. You can
series.
stop it now. Yeah.
Which we should
How come you sound like I don't know, you sound like a robot?
The micro.
Or
I used a different
Or you sucked in some
different
helium.
microphone. No. I went through I think 3 different microphones during the whole Moonfaker series. The second one was not particularly good, I'm sorry to say, but it is what it is, I guess. But hey, Razzle's joined the chat.
Dr.
Hi, Raza.
Razzle in the building.
You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
Hi guys, nice to see you again.
Good to
Yeah.
see you, my man.
How are you, Raza?
Hey, how are you?
You can stop
Very
sharing
good,
video.
thank you.
All right. Yeah. So very, very interesting things. I wanna say something that may be controversial. It's not going to be very popular. Maybe my listeners will understand where I'm coming from. But I feel, how do I say this? I feel we need, I don't know. I like Bart Sibrel, but I think there are better options to represent our movement. Someone like a Sir Marcus Allen, someone like a
Raza,
Randy
can you mute
Walsh,
your mic, please?
someone like a Randy Walsh. And I understand that's going to be extremely controversial because everyone loves Bart Sibrel, but there were a couple of times where he was tripping up. And this is just my opinions, and I want to, if I know you guys are going to disagree with it, and that's fine. This is just my opinion. I just feel there are better people to represent the moon skeptic side of things. Bringing in religion to the moon landings does not look good, in my opinion. And then some of his stories sound really incredible. Like maybe they did happen, maybe they didn't, but I do wonder if that's why he gets a lot of the airtime, to kind of discredit serious inquiry into the moon landings. He's got invited to Joe Rogan. He's been invited to the Danny Jones podcast, a large platform. I had him on for around episode 100. I like Bart, but I just feel there are better representatives. I know that's super controversial to say, and so that's just what I think. Any thoughts on that?
Well, speaking purely as the, at this point in time, I've become the go-to guy for technical information. Technical Q&As about the Apollo hoax. Bart has often come to me asking for my questions on this or that and stuff. And I think where Bart's shortcoming is that he tends to make a bit oversimplifications in his presentations to try and basically get this out there. I noticed there was a few instances where he sort of slipped up in the debate, like he initially didn't seem to realize that the 25,000 kilometer per hour that Duke was talking about applies to TLI only. Once you shut the rocket off, the vehicle is supposedly in a highly elliptical orbit that will take it out to as far as the moon. And by the time, the way orbits work is that the further you go from the body you're orbiting, the gravity slows you down. As you go towards it, your gravity speeds you up. That's why, when they say they're near the moon, they're only going 4,000 kilometers per hour now, whatever it was. And there was another. Oh, this really ticked me off. I can't believe he fell for this and stuff like that. But there was he played the clip of I believe his name was Reed Wiseman, the Artemis II commander, where he was talking about, this is the first time we're going to the moon. Well, what he actually said was, this is the first time we'll be going to the moon and have people in orbit at the same time. He's basically talking about how there will be Artemis 2, and at the same time there will be the ISS, the people in the International Space Station, that there will be people in Earth orbit at the same time, supposedly while they're supposed to be going to the moon. Personally, I think the mission Artemis 2 is just going to get cancelled before it even gets off the ground, but that's beside the point right now. And I've told him how many times about the Warner von Braun thing. You need to adjust it. You need to adjust his original calculations, because his proposal, von Braun's original proposal, was for a crew of 50 people. So yeah, of course you're going to need a rocket. If you're doing a direct ascent thing, you're going to need a rocket in the order of 800,000 tons. If you were to scale it back to 3 people, then the rocket would only be about 5,000 tons. But still, another thing that seems to be constantly overlooked is that the number of people on the mission is only half of the matter. The von Braun proposal also considered dismantling the spent descent propellant tanks and using those as a makeshift moon base, putting them in a crevice or a cave or something, and use that as a cabin that you would live in and hide from radiation and meteorites and the like. Of course, if you're going to be dismantling parts of the spacecraft itself and use that as your shelter, then obviously that's going to add to the mass and require much more fuel. By the same extension, Elon Musk has gone on record to say that the radiation hazard is such that you would need a column of water pointed to the sun. He eventually conceded that the column of water has to completely surround the capsule, and by design, that's going to need a gigantic rocket, which will need multiple different refueling missions just to send it out to the moon. Speaking of which, Duke, he actually mentioned the solar flare hazards in his in the debate. He said that if there was a solar flare, we would get back into the command module real quick and basically point the service module, the bulky end of the craft, towards the incoming front of the radiation. Well, that's not going to work, because the solar flare particles, they travel along the magnetic field lines. You see, the magnetic field of the sun, it spans across the entire solar system. And so when a solar flare, even if the solar flare is pointed away from the Earth, the field lines are going to carry it in all directions, and so you're going to need protection on all sides. Elon Musk was so far as to claim, we just have a column of water pointed to the sun. I don't think the radiation is going to be a big deal. I sent him multiple Twitter posts about that. I sent him links to my videos. And at the ISS R&D conference, he finally conceded. He didn't mention me by name, but he obviously had seen my videos. He was literally paraphrasing everything I said in there, nearly word for word. We learned this recently. I didn't quite understand it, but I always thought of the particles as coming straight out from the sun, but they go along the magnetic field lines, so you need protection on 4 or 5 sides. It was practically, yeah. I know which videos you've been watching, mate. You don't have to be cagey about it, but So this myth that they could just point the bulky end of the ship towards the incoming radiation is ludicrous. But yeah, those were getting back to what I was answering for. Those are the points I thought where Bart fell down in the debate, and overall, I think he likes to go in guns blazing when it comes to discussing with the astronauts and stuff. I prefer to take the diplomatic approach, the innocent until proven guilty approach. You might have seen my encounter with Buzz Aldrin. I attended the Australian Geographic Awards ceremony where he was appearing. This was about a year after the Dutch moon rock thing hit the papers, where it turned out to be petrified wood. I asked him about it. I wasn't accusatory. I wasn't antagonistic. I asked him, at the time, when you're in possession of this thing, were you aware it was petrified wood, or were you also led to believe it was a genuine moon rock? He seemed kind of nervous about hearing that kind of question. Obviously, he went there expecting the typical questions. What was it like on the moon? Could you see the stars? Could you see the Earth? What was it like? This and that, blah, blah, blah. To be asked that kind of question. That obviously seemed to cheer him up. You could see him sort of squirming in his seat. But, I wasn't going to jump on that. I wasn't going to cite that against him or anything like that. I wanted to let him answer the question, see what he has to say about that. Like I said, innocent until proven guilty, diplomatic approach. That's the way I prefer to do things.
Yeah.
And what did Buzz say? What was Buzz's reply?
Petrified wood. He said, petrified wood. Well, that doesn't sound like that came from the moon. Then he suggested that the samples that they had given to the Dutch had been switched at some stage, replaced with a petrified wood sample. I can actually
Well, that's
send you
just the thing.
the link if you
Yes,
want.
that's the thing, because they weren't kept in custody. There wasn't a trail. There was, and
No
even
chain of
one of the
custody.
fellows, yeah, but even one of the fellows said that online. He said that rock could have been switched at any time because they were redoing the museum and they were putting some of the displays in the back. Anybody could have taken it and changed it. So you
Marcus,
can't really
is that
go
where you
off.
got yours?
I think
That's
they.
where
Wait a
Marcus
minute.
got his. Yeah, maybe that's where Marcus got his from.
Wait a minute. My question is the official story that one congressman gave the rock to the museum, and then later that congressman disappeared, and so we don't know where the rock came from? Isn't that the official story now?
The official story is that it was basically gifted by the ambassador to the Netherlands at the time, who accompanied the Apollo astronauts on their tour. But the whole major point of contention that's been with the pro-NASA side is they argue that this was never an official moon rock. It was all a case of mistaken identity. In that regard, I think the better sample to be citing would be Big Bertha, which was an Apollo 14 rock. Let me get it off my head. It was 14321, if I recall correctly. That was the rock sample number, because that rock turned out to be from Earth. What gave this one away is there was a zircon crystal inside it, right? And surrounding the zircons, they're extremely resilient minerals. You see, they survive anything. Okay, and this was surrounded by felsic material. Felsic, of course, meaning that it was formed from magmas that were rich in lighter elements. You see, like a lot of quartz, a lot of plagioclase, a lot of the lighter colored elements. You see, whereas these are usually formed from the melting of sedimentary rocks. You see, and sedimentary rocks are of course formed by the recycling of the Earth's surface through weathering events and this and that. So there's no sedimentary rocks on the moon. There's no weathering events like that, so you wouldn't expect to find felsic rocks on the moon. So they thought, yeah, there's felsic in this moon rock, so it has to have come from Earth. But the conclusion was that it was an Earth meteorite that they had accidentally sampled. And let me just get here's the picture. Where did it show up? Okay, it was about. Yeah, it was about 56 seconds in.
Coming back to my point about the Dutch museum, my thing is, what I'm trying to say is that they're using this as an excuse, as a scapegoat. It's like, why is this piece of rock petrified wood? And the official NASA excuse was, oh, wait, we didn't give it to you. That other guy gave it to you. And that other guy just happened to disappear, so nobody can ask him where he got the rock from.
Well, that was Mittendorf.
Yeah, Middendorf, I believe he was actually quoted in the newspapers at the time saying that, oh, this was petrified wood, that's news to me. But I just sent you the link of my encounter with Aldrin if you want to play the clip.
I just had to get my... Mr. Marcus, do you like my tinfoil hat?
Oh, I like your tinfoil hat. Always good to have a tinfoil hat. Tinfoil Hat Tuesday. Hello, Simon Dan, if you're listening, come and have a chat with us.
Yeah.
Oh, I would like to get into Simon Dan's video. I actually saw that because he said, what did he say in the thing? I got his actually what he said in the video about the moon rocks.
Gerald, before you're jumping around too much, let me get you your 56 seconds of that video you sent me.
Sure.
And let's see.
It's in the chat. The link. It's in the chat. I sent the link.
Can you see it on the screen right now? There we go.
Yep, we see. Yeah.
All right. It's at the 55-second mark. Tell me when to stop it.
Maybe just put it a couple seconds back. It should be all right.
As I'm sure you might have read in the newspapers recently, a moon rock that was on display in a Dutch museum, which you, Neil, and Mike had given to the then ambassador to the Netherlands at the time, it turned out to be a piece of petrified wood. I was wondering, at the time, when you were in possession of this, were you aware that this was petrified wood, or were you also led to believe that it was a genuine moon rock?
Petrified wood. Well, that doesn't sound like it came from the moon. The samples that we, as best I can recall, that we distributed among world leaders in our 45-day around the world trip were encased in plastic lucite, so that you could see the small amount of moon dust. Now, what happens to that display once it is presented to somebody is not the responsibility of the United States, and it certainly isn't the responsibility of the crew that gave it to them. And whether that got changed, substituted for something that then became valuable to someone else, and they substituted a piece of petrified wood. That would be my more probable explanation for this. Now, who did that? We have no idea. But I'm sure the United States would not present to world leaders a piece of petrified wood claiming that it was a sample from the moon.
Okay, so you're telling me that you give these samples out to the people and someone swapped it around after you gave it to the world leader properly?
Well, that's my best guess, but it's a guess. I have no information at all.
Okay. My second.
I know that I had a watch that I wore on the moon.
Buzz, I've got a question for you, actually.
Okay, you can stop it now.
That's a pretty badass video. Good job, Jera.
Yeah, thanks. Like I said, the diplomatic approach. The diplomatic approach is the way to go. You know, I found
it can be, or I mean, sometimes you do need to be aggressive. It depends on who you're dealing with. I mean, if you're dealing with an if you're dealing with an MC Toon type, I think being diplomatic is not going to work. You kind of have to go down to their level. So it just it depends on who you're dealing with, in my opinion.
Well, there are people who are worth being diplomatic too, and people who are just trolling around the place and not really worth your time. Honestly, unless the person nowadays unless they have a huge footprint in the mainstream media, I don't give them my time of day anymore. If they're just some nobodies on the internet, some faceless nobodies on the internet, I just present all the counter evidence that debunks their assertions without specifically referring to them. I find it saves you a lot of headaches that way. But there was a funny thing that happened with that encounter, right? It's actually shown in the video as well, but much later on, somebody from the Sydney Morning Herald was at the conference as well, and once the thing was over, she approached me asking where I was from. I said JW Studios, which was the name of my YouTube productions. Okay, and sometime later, I received an email asking me to confirm that I was at the thing. I assumed they just needed the names of all the people who were asking questions and this and that. Next day, huge front page, rear page article, I should say, huge full article in the back of the Herald the next day with a headline: "Security, we have a problem." Basically alleging I was some antagonistic gatecrasher that had to be removed from the conference. They even likened my my appearance there to Bart getting punched in the face by Aldrin.
Yeah, they really lied. They really made a mockery out of that, because they were telling you that you were a hooligan that needed to be removed. And you never did anything. You just asked him a question, and then at the end, we can see you just walking around, and Buzz leaves with that woman, and that's the end of it. You never did anything wrong.
Yeah, in fact, if you want to prove that I was not removed from the conference, if you want to jump ahead into the video, you can. 4 minutes and 33 seconds. That's when the end of it appears. If you want to put it back on there, you can see I'm still there at the conference.
I put my stupid mugshot on the face or on the screen. There we go.
Always worth it.
All right, where do
4 minutes and 33 seconds should be it.
Copy that.
Yeah, you can see the news article and everything like that. And it's just crazy what they did.
Still there.
Anyways.
Yeah, who remembers the first prisoners that came here to Australia?
Oh, we do on Norfolk Island, but that's another whole story.
Which island?
I live on Norfolk Island. Ladies and gentlemen, Buzz has got quite a few other engagements.
Are you talking about the newspaper clipping? Because it was a little bit before.
This article is totally false.
Yeah, that's the article that they cited. Yeah, that's the article in question. The security, we have a problem. The cheeky bastards. They basically alleged I was some antagonistic gatecrasher that had to be removed from the conference. All right, and I complained bitterly to them. I even showed that I was invited to the conference. I had the email records to prove that I was invited. Basically what happened is that I sent them an email asking if it was possible to get an interview with him. But they said no, they can't do one-on-one interviews. But you're more than welcome to come to the press conference. Okay, so I agreed to turn up. And That was it. So if
I got
you know,
you.
they anyway, so it's all in there. But if you can see, they basically alleged it says right there in the article there, to security we have a problem. But you can see from 4 minutes and 33 seconds onwards that I'm still there, and even as he's walking out the door, I'm standing there watching him leave. Packing up my camera, packing up all the equipment. You can see the news lady come up to me asking where I'm from, and that's where I went to, I guess.
Well, given it was Buzz Aldrin, you kind of lucked out he didn't give you a knuckle sandwich like you did Bart Sibrel back in the
I personally
day.
think it could have been handled much better between the two of them, because I don't think either of them were pretty innocent in that regard, because Aldrin first of all called Bart an attention seeker, to which Bart said, well, you're the one that just got paid $2,000 to talk about something that you didn't do. That's called being a thief. That's where the whole back and forth sort of came about, and ultimately it became physical at the end.
Yeah. No, but see,
just one point on that video, Aldrin claiming that he was giving out rocks to the world leaders. Now that tour, the Big Leap tour, I think they called it, when he visited all sorts of world leaders like Queen of England, the Pope, presidents, and all the rest of it, they didn't give any rocks out because they hadn't been available to be given out. Because that tour was done almost immediately after they had landed. That was the whole point of it. When everybody was so overexcited about Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, they were the three who took part in the tour. The rocks were not available to be given out at that point. You could check the dates when they were available. So asking him about petrified wood, he got confused that he'd been giving things out, and he was trying to claim he hadn't. He hadn't given anything out. Nobody had given any rocks out at that point. They were given out to 150 countries, little grains of sand encased in plastic. That was what was given out. There's one over here in the UK at the Science Museum in London.
There's one here in China, which I've personally seen.
Yeah. I mean, that was the whole point, that they would be given out to world leaders, not as rocks.
We have one on display at. I was just going to say we have one on display at the Paris Museum. I just looked it up. It says here
I'd like to just say something here quick. Raza, I have a question for you. There was a fellow that I was talking to yesterday in the chat there over on the channel. He was saying that he worked in China for quite a while in the universities. And he said that you were wrong about China in the universities, that they don't believe in Apollo, because he said all the ones in that university did believe Apollo went to the moon. I'd just like to see what comment you have on that, because I hope he's listening. What do you have to say about that in the universities over there?
So you're saying this was a comment from
Yes.
from a non-Chinese who is working in China?
That's right. At a university.
I don't know who this person is or what university he taught at. There may be. Okay, so within the universities, you have the Chinese teachers, and then you have the foreign teachers, like me. I'm not a Chinese citizen. So what the foreigners believe is up to them, but what the Chinese people believe is up to them as well. So the thing is, they wouldn't be talking about this subject in the first place. It's not policy, So for example, like if I was trying to teach religion in China, I would be deported from the country. It's illegal for me to try to spread religion here.
Right.
And so some foreigners like me who live here may be talking about whatever they want. I even met one foreigner who was a flat earther, and so it's actually you have to sign a contract that says you won't speak about these things.
Really?
And so if there's a foreigner here and he believes in the Apollo missions, then he can personally believe whatever he wants, but he's not allowed to teach that to his students in the university, because that wouldn't be so that's the point.
So does the university make you sign a contract?
Right. I'm under contract
Really?
not to spread any religious dogmas. Like if I was trying to spread flat Earth, I would be removed from China. Now, if I was trying to teach people the moon landings were real,
Yeah.
I could probably get away with that. Nobody in the Chinese government would come after me for saying that, of course. But
Well, if you were teaching,
but
if
they
you were
would.
teaching flat
But
Earth in,
Oh
I
no.
was just going to say, if you were teaching flat Earth in Australia, I'd probably have you removed as well. Get him exported out of here.
But anyways,
But,
Raza, but his question, or rather, he was saying that he has been in China for 14 years and he's never heard anybody say in a university that they have not landed on the moon. He says they all believe they did.
okay, so like I'm saying, that foreigner, whatever, if he even was teaching in China, he has the personal belief that the Apollo missions were real, and he can teach that. It's not against the law here to teach that the Apollo missions are real. But when his students, the people he's teaching to, definitely are not going to, come in his face about that. Well, I heard it was a hoax, but they have heard it was a hoax. But that would be rather impolite for them to come up to that foreign teacher and say, well, there's people talking about it being hoax. They wouldn't say that to him. They would
Okay, you
talk
see
about him
that.
behind his back, though. They would say, oh, he believes that it was real. Okay, let him talk about it being real. But we all know it's a hoax. They're not going to come to him and tell them it's a hoax.
You see, this is another thing with the Van Allen belts, what this guy was saying too, and it just kind of segues into what you were saying about the Apollo can't get through the belts and all that. It was very interesting that on that UFO conference in Congress, the chairwoman Luna, she asked those fellas that were sitting down on the row down there, she asked them, how do aliens get here if we can't even get through the Van Allen belts? And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I don't believe I just heard this. And it was on the last 30 minutes of that conference. It's at time 1747. And we're not going to do it here now, but I'm just saying that if anybody wants to watch that, that chairwoman was asking all of those people in that audience at the table that were presenting their evidence. She says she asked them, how are the aliens getting here when we cannot get through the Van Allen belts? Can you imagine that? I mean, wow.
Where was this conference?
This was the UFO conference. It was Congress. This was about 3 days ago when they had this up. Right, because they're going through all of the UFO stuff, and these people are whistleblowers presenting their evidence for their case. And this has been running in Congress now for the last 6 months. But it was just this last segment that I was watching when she was said that, how are they getting here when we can't get through the Van Allen belts? And the whole room went silent. Nobody asked the question. No one answered the question.
I would like to just quickly address I would just like to quickly address Marcus regarding the Goodwill Tour. I just looked it up here. It seems the Goodwill Tour, where they would have been giving out the rock samples, they started on. They left Houston on September 29, 1969. So that would have been when the Goodwill Tour would have started, when they've been starting traveling around the world here. So they went from Washington to...
Is this a plausible way to get through the Van Allen radiation belts?
Oh, yeah, just like a plane. No. But,
so this guy says they got through the Van Halen belts by wearing overalls. I thought that was rather funny.
Man. Oh, man.
We got to add some jokes every now and then, because otherwise people will probably start counting sheep.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to talk about something that Jared had talked about before, was the radiation, right? And the other question we've been talking about recently is, why are the Artemis readings so high compared to the Apollo missions? And then the official excuse which ChatGTP is giving now is that on the Artemis mission, they purposely placed the the radiation sensors in the unshielded parts of the craft. So then it's like, and that comes back to your whole thing about the fuel. I asked them, well, what do you mean the unshielded parts? And they said, well, the astronauts themselves are sitting in a place which is better shielding because the tanks are there, and they purposely put the radiation detectors outside of that shielded area. But then it comes back to the question, well, why does Artemis need these tanks and all this shielded area if we didn't need that on Apollo?
Mm-hmm. And what does the AI say about that?
Of course, it's just kind of a lie about that. You know.
Well,
Yeah, well, look at the AI, what it did to us. I asked it, were there any pocket mice taken on Apollo 17? And this is ChatGPT. It said, no pocket mice were taken on Apollo 17 or any other Apollo mission. And then I corrected it. That was in a few videos back when I showed that. And then I asked the AI from Google, and it said, yes, pocket mice were taken. Well, which is it? You see, you can't trust it, so don't trust it, people. Look.
No, and that was one of the things that Danny Jones had a couple of points brought up. Was, let's ask ChatGPT if this is true or not.
I've had a few
it bothers
problems
me.
with.
It bothers me greatly that so many people rely on this AI, for all their information, for all their evidence, when it constantly gets things wrong quite a bit. Yeah, it can help from time to time, for sure. It can make things easier, but it shouldn't be looked at as the end all be all. You have to do the manual work yourself. And so that was one of the things that bothered me. Bart Sibrel said a couple things, and Danny Jones said, let's ask ChatGPT if this is correct. Like, if that was gospel, it is ridiculous.
I once asked ChatGPT about me, pull up a profile about me. It said I was born in Perth. I've never set foot in Perth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny because the thing is, what a lot of people probably don't understand. I'm sure if you're familiar with AI, you have a better understanding, but maybe the lay person or the average person, it really is just scraping information from here and there and everywhere, and then it just assembles it together, and sometimes it gets it right and other times it doesn't. It's completely off, so
I find if you're just asking a simple science sort of question, like why do we always see the same side of the moon, or why is the sky blue, or something like that, it'll give you a decent enough answer. But if you try to ask it more complex trivia based questions about history or advanced science or physics type questions and stuff, it's bound to fall down along the way. And so you've got to constantly fact check it.
I think one of the problems too is there's people that chat with these AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Grok, whatever, choose the one you wish, and they start to engage with it as if it were some kind of human, and that in itself is dangerous. That may be controversial, but I don't think that's. People have to remember you're not speaking with a real person. And I think slowly people are forgetting that. They're blurring that line, and you have to be wary of that.
If you keep asking questions, then ChatGPT will admit, oh, I was wrong about that. I was wrong about that. But in the end, when it comes to the moon landing, in the end, the final thing, ChatGPT, it was real. It was real. But if, for example, if you ask the DeepSeek AI, then it will say in the end that, well, there's still questions remaining about the moon landings.
Yeah.
Which comes, I brought up a link. I don't know if you can share that, but this, I want to come back.
Yeah,
I wanted to address this Charlie Duke debate. If you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead and
Just
address
really
it.
quick.
I mean, real quick, when I first heard Bart Sibrel was interviewing or debating Charlie Duke, I thought it was David Duke for a second. I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with the moon landings? I was completely
David
oblivious.
Scott.
Yeah, I was completely oblivious that there was an astronaut named Charlie Duke. You guys are hardcore into it. I'm not that hardcore. I'm only starting to get my feet wet, so I had no idea who even Charlie Duke was. prior to this.
I'll give you a bit of a
debate.
trivia about him. He was the Capcom at the time of Apollo 11. He was the guy who made the famous quote, "Tranquility Base here, we copy it down." Yeah, we copy it down, Eagle. He was the guy who was contacting them at the time.
Yeah.
The guy calling out the readouts of fuel and stuff that they supposedly had left.
So this is Dr. Raz's link that he wanted me to post up. What are we looking at, Raza?
I can't read it, but is Charlie Duke's name there?
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can find it. I can't zoom in. That's the issue. Let's see. So the website that I'm on is Freemasons in Space, and it's by apparently a Freemasonry website. Let's see if we can
So
see.
there's 14 publicly admitted Freemasons who worked on
Oh,
the
here we go. Astronauts. Edwin Buzz Aldrin was a Freemason. Leroy Gordon Cooper. Don Eisel. John Glenn. Isley. John Glenn.
Yes.
Virgil Gus Grissom. Interesting. James Irwin. Edgar D. Mitchell. Walter Skira.
Shara. It's pronounced
Shara.
Shara. The last one
And
is
then
Thomas P. Stafford.
Thomas Stafford and Paul J. Wetz.
Yeah, I think this website is in
Wetz?
Wetz, I believe his name is. He was on Skylab. But I think this website is an error, though. Here it says here, Armstrong was not a Freemason. His father, Stephen Koenig Armstrong, was an active Freemason. That doesn't seem right. His father was Stephen Armstrong.
Okay, so we have 14. Go ahead, Jerry.
I can confirm that the other astronauts mentioned here are Freemasons. I've seen their names mentioned elsewhere, but I'm skeptical of what this says here about Armstrong here. It doesn't seem right because I looked up his parents' names. His parents were
right. So Armstrong claims to be a Christian, or he used to claim to be a Christian, and Bart discussed that with him.
I mean, basically, what difference does it make if they are Freemasons?
Well, so the point is this. If I would have been Bart Sibrel and I would have had a chance to confront Charlie Duke, I would have taken a Freemasonic Bible and put it in his face and say, put your hand on this and swear that you're not a Freemason. Because that's what the whole question boils down to. How many of them were Freemasons and how many of them weren't?
But Raz, can I ask you a question?
One second, guys. Here's a commercial break as we have Randy Walsh joining us, my man.
Randy.
Hello,
Mr.
Randy.
Randy Walsh.
Hello,
Love this
everyone.
guy.
Hello.
Good to be here.
This is him and Marcus Allen. Randy Walsh and Marcus Allen is who I vote for to represent our community.
Oh, I'll second that.
And fight me. If anyone disagrees with me, fight me. Let's put him up. Put him up. Come on, put him up.
Here, Randy, your mic's a little low.
I challenge. How is it now?
Yeah, there we go.
Good.
Hey, Raz, I was going to ask you one quick question. Now, here we have Buzz Aldrin. He was a 33-degree Mason, correct?
These degrees don't really mean much.
No, okay, but he was a Mason. Then why did he also had a Bible, didn't he? Or he also did a Catholic communion while he was on the moon, supposedly. So why would he do a Masonic ritual and a Catholic?
Well, there was
ritual?
okay. So if you can buy it like on eBay, you can buy a Masonic Bible, and it looks the same as a normal Bible. It just has a cross and a compass and a square on the cover. But they claim to be also Christian, and they'll even do Christian rituals such as taking communion, but they'll do it with a Freemasonic interpretation in their own minds.
But he was doing communion. He had the little cracker when he was eating that little biscuit. So how do you mix
but
those
I
two?
think that Neil Armstrong himself wouldn't take part in that, because he knew that that was a Masonic thing. Their interpretation was a Masonic interpretation, and he wouldn't participate because Neil Armstrong himself was a Christian, and he was really the only one in the whole group which wasn't a Freemason, and they allowed him into their group because of his spirit of nationalism. Neil Armstrong was doing it for the country, while all the rest of them were doing it for this Freemasonic New World Order agenda.
Okay, yeah, that's good. I just wanted to ask you that.
Let's
So
get
Randy,
someone made this comment real quick. Can you please give Scott some time? We haven't heard from Scott in a while. Scott, what do you have to say about all this? Uh-oh. He's probably like, screw these guys, I'm out of here.
I think he took a bathroom break.
Scott, you still there?
Okay,
Scott
so
took
if
a
Scott's not
bathroom
going to come in, let's invite our newest guest, Mr. Randy Walsh. He is an author of several books on the moon landings. What's up, Randy?
Hello, Paul.
Wheezy. Hello, Marcus, everyone. Wheezy, good to be back, as always.
Hell
Always
yeah.
good to be with you. So I caught a little bit of what all of you have been talking about while I was coming back. So I was able to listen to some of it live. So I'm about to break ranks here with all of you. I thought that the debate last night was a disaster. It did not represent us very well in our community. I got a few choice words for Bart Sibrel. I wasn't impressed with him at all. And I'm not going to hold back here, okay? But there's a few other points that I want to get out of the way before I get to Bart Sibrel. So I'd like the floor for about 10 minutes, if that's okay.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So anyway, regarding the training that came up, I'm going to go through several of the subjects. I watched the debate last night. And I mean, needless to say, I wasn't impressed with Charlie Duke either. But, you know, I'm trying to factor in his age, the fact that he's 91, it's been 55 years. However, this is not an event that it's not like you forgot what you had for dinner yesterday. This is an event in history. He seemed very coherent to me. He seemed on top of his game in most areas. I got the impression that at times he was playing dumb. Like, why are we talking about this? Why are we here? Well, you knew why you were here. You were reminded several times by the moderator and Bart that you had agreed to this. And I understand that you also get paid for doing this. So I didn't buy that sort of cock and bull story about why am I here and why are we talking about this? Oh, you mean the moon landings are fake? Is that what you're saying? That was horse shit as far as I'm concerned. Okay, that's just crap. All right, so let's put the Alzheimer's aside for now, okay? Because I didn't see any evidence of that last night myself. And as for Bart beating up on him, well, so what? Didn't they beat up on Bart 20 years ago? I mean, it's okay. It's okay when violence goes or abuse goes one way. And I didn't really see Bart abusing Charlie Duke in any way. He was kind of standing his ground from his point of view. Having said that, when Charlie Duke was talking about training, he mentioned picking up room rocks. He never mentioned anything about training in the simulator, the lunar module, the command module, the avionics. I'm a pilot. I wanted to hear more about why they were duplicating aircraft avionics when you don't need that in space. That's the kind of talk I want to hear from these people. All right. What we got in return was nothing but a scripted, the usual scripted NASA narrative, right? So that was that. So now we move on to the Saturn V. Charlie Duke was wrong on that. There was one disaster in the Saturn V rocket, and that was Apollo 6. So for him to say that it was all worked perfectly is absolute crap. He's actually reading from, it sounded like he was reading from the mainstream media narrative press kit, okay? Oh, all the emissions were great because there was no accidents. The Saturn V worked perfectly, so on and so forth. But he forgot about Apollo 6, which is a near disaster. And I may remind people that are watching this that after they fixed the so-called repair, they made repairs to the F1 engines, there was never any further testing, neither static nor in-flight testing, and they went straight 7 months later to putting a crew on board. So nobody's been able to explain that from the NASA defenders. I've never heard anyone come forward and explain that. Explain to me how not being a NASA engineer justifies the fact that I don't know what I'm talking about because they didn't do any testing. Every technology produced on Earth requires testing. It requires testing after testing after testing, right? Before you risk the lives of either passengers on a commercial airliner or astronauts on a rocket or even military test pilots. It requires testing, okay? So that argument fails there too. Let me move on. Okay, and then there was the lunar gravity. Oh, this one was good. He actually admits in the interview, Charlie Duke last night, that he knows nothing. He knew nothing about the Mascons. I know about the Mascons. They knew about the Mascons back then when they were landing on the moon. Mascons are differential gravity pockets on the moon that I guess wasn't factored into the Apollo computer. I mean, come on. This is an astronaut who's Apollo 16 says he landed on the moon. He admits he knows nothing about Mascons. Okay. If you don't know anything about Mascons, then why were you traveling there in the first place? I mean, red flag, everyone. Okay. Now, I'm just getting warmed up. So just bear with me here. All right.
I love it. I love the passion. My man, Randy, that's my boy right there. And this is why I vote Sir Marcus Allen, Randy Walsh as representatives of the community. And Vice President Gerald White.
I love working with Marcus Allen. Marcus Allen, it's such an honor to work with you. It really is. Always an honor to work with Marcus Allen. But let me just get these points out here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have 130 people listening in live. Shout out to everyone. Thank you guys for coming out. Much love. Go on, Randy. Keep destroying.
This is really good. Now, Charlie Duke claims that he can't remember his experience working on the lunar surface. That was the first thing. And then later on in the interview, about 3.5 hours later, all of a sudden he remembers the experience working on walking on the lunar surface. He didn't remember it 3 hours ago, but he remembers it 3 hours later, right? But he doesn't remember the fact that they had agreed to talk about the fact that they're going to be debating the Apollo moon missions, whether it was real or fake. So, I mean, he was just contradicting himself all over the place. And then, the radiation. Oh, that was a good one. I forgot about that. The radiation. He actually admitted, and you cannot take that back. He says, we didn't discuss the radiation. We never talked about the radiation. We never had any meetings about the radiation going through the Van Allen belts. I mean, really, you're writing my book for me, Charlie Duke. You're writing my book for me. And in fact, that's the title of my next book. We never talked about the radiation. We never discussed it. All right. Wow. Good one. Need I say anything more? Okay, now.
What is the purpose of this discussion?
You should make that a subtitle of the book. We didn't discuss the radiation. Subtitle, what is the purpose of this discussion?
I may have to rename this show. What is the purpose of this discussion?
What is the purpose of this discussion? Well, wow, you should have. I mean, I thought the funniest moment was when Charlie Duke was scratching his head because he couldn't explain why NASA would destroy that technology. He says, but we went to the moon. But yeah, we destroyed the technology, but we went to the moon, right? That's really going to win people over there, Charlie. Good work. Wink, wink, right? Okay, now I'm getting close, and I want to make a few comments about Bart Sibrel. He's on my list next, and I'm not too impressed with him either.
I wanted to boil down Charlie Duke. His whole debate, his whole thing was, I am the living proof that we went to the moon. That's it. End of story. I'm the living proof.
Basically, you could sum up that nearly 4-hour podcast into, I went to the moon. I collected moon rocks.
Exactly.
That's pretty much it.
Now,
moon rocks.
My comments here, I'm going to be looking into the camera, and I'm going to be talking to you, Bart Sibrel. Okay? I've sat on this for the last couple of years, and I could tell you right now, I'm not impressed. Okay? I was not impressed with your performance last night. You said that you were waiting for the right person to debate on this. You've been asked many times. You turned it down. You actually turned down a debate of a platform that I was on. So you've turned down many debates. And I feel you turned them down is because you're not confident enough in order to debate your work when it comes to debating somebody who really knows what they're talking about. It was really unfair of you to come out and say that to a 91-year-old individual, okay? Yes, I don't agree with him. He's lied for the last 50 years. I agree. But you took advantage of that. The other thing I didn't like, Bart, was the fact that you were grandstanding every chance you got. You were jumping on the bandwagon. Every time the moderator, I believe his name was Danny. Was it Danny?
Yeah.
Danny Jones.
Yeah. Every time the moderator was going after, diplomatically speaking, but he did, to be fair to him, he did get in a few points with Charlie Duke. You were stepping on the moderator and beating the war drums. And that was not a good look for you. And it was not a good look for us. You should have showed a little bit more humility, stand back and let the moderator do his job, right? Because I thought he was being quite effective last night. All right. He was asking Charlie Duke questions like, well, but what about this? Like, you got to understand why people are actually questioning this because of this over here. And what about that? But every time you took the opportunity to jump on the bandwagon. So that wasn't a good look. It looked like you were ganging up on a 91-year-old man. Okay. So that was the other thing. And the other thing is, how many people get on the Joe Rogan show? None. None of us will ever get on the Joe Rogan show. And why is that? Because we're not connected. That makes me suspicious of you too. I suspect that you're connected to a lot more powerful elites than we've been told. It's the only way you can get on the Joe Rogan show. Joe Rogan will never invite any of us on there, okay? Because we're not connected. So I think it's kind of like a who you know kind of situation there. And I have to be like, look, you bring up these videos of whistleblowers. I don't think that's a good argument because those whistleblowers cannot be substantiated, okay? Sitting there to 3 or 4 minutes, every 5 minutes, listening to these videos on your website is not selling the narrative. People come to hear you talk, Bart, not listen to your videos. They want to hear you. That's the whole idea of a debate, okay? That's what I do. I don't bring any lying. I don't bring any notes with me. I talk from my head, okay? I talk on my feet, and that's what you should be doing. And I read your book, and it was okay. I didn't mind it so much. The book was pretty good. But I'll be honest with you, I found some of the stories in there a little bit too far-fetched and contrived. If the CIA really wanted you, they would have had you. They're not that inept. No matter what the propaganda out there says about them, they're not that inept. They would have had you. And finally, and I want to make this one last point here, you need to leave your religious beliefs out of this. I thought it was very unfair of you to be going after anyone, let alone Charlie Duke, but anyone in terms of their religious beliefs. This is not the platform that I'm a spiritual person too, but I respect everybody's spiritual beliefs, and you have no right to be imparting your spiritual beliefs on someone else. You could talk about what you believe, but you're actually hectoring him at the same time. That did not make us look good either.
If I may,
the microphone.
If I may add
Jared,
something,
we got to let Scott in. Scott has been in here patiently, and he hasn't said a word. So let's let Scott. What do you have to say, Scott?
Well, if I was sitting in front of Charles Duke, not just at his age alone, I'd still keep the same respect that he has as a national figure out there. And it doesn't matter whether he did or he didn't. You don't have to sit in front of him because he already knows the position that you take as far as the moon landings. Okay? So I wouldn't want to debate him on what I believe that he did not do. Okay? What I would be interested in is the stuff that we know that he did do. Okay? He did the training. He went out on the geological surveys to gather all of the different rocks. I'd be asking him how in practice they set up the stations, how they developed the cue cards. Were they using the geological rocks at these stations? Because when you listen to him, he said, oh yeah, we drive up on the rover and it's okay, now we got to go get the rocks. Okay, that's the stuff I hear from him. Okay, but at the same time, he's going to give you an honest answer. He's going to say what they found when they were on the geologic, like when they came to Canada at Sudbury, right? It's an impact crater. So that's where they're getting the breccia from. That kind of stuff. Then I would ask him, where are those rocks from the geological survey? Where are they stored? They're part of the history of the Apollo program, right? So like they wouldn't just throw them out because we already know that those are the rocks that they gathered that they are now claiming are the moon rocks. We already know that. Okay? Then when it comes to the practice on there, the rover does not have the power at 4 quarter horse electric motors to run around on the Earth. Okay, by the time you put all that together with the astronauts on there, you got about 1,400 pounds. Well, that thing's not going to accelerate like we see in the videos. So they must have had more power. And if you look at the training, the difference in the motors, they don't describe the amount of power that the electric motors were producing for the training rovers. They obviously had more. You could get that kind of information from him, okay, because that he actually did. He was actually there for. Then I would ask him about the suits that they were wearing for full simulated practice, because there's no way they're going to be running around with a 180-pound suit and PLSS. Okay, not only that, none of the equipment in the PLSS is needed when you're practicing on Earth. So I'd asked them how they were modified, how the suits were modified. They were obviously made an awful lot lighter. Then I would say, where are those suits? Because I know where the suits are. They're in the museum. You can see that the zippers don't do all the way up. It's 2 inches short on the back. Okay? The ones they have on display for the PLSS, they're all put together with all the equipment to show it. Okay? But does it actually function? Or is it just a bunch of shiny parts in there? So where are the PLSSs they used for practice? Because all they'd need is a little battery for the communications and a battery with a little fan in there to blow some air into them when they're suited up. All right?
Well, they have the spacesuits, and they, more importantly, they claim that the spacesuits themselves show indication of micrometeorites and UV radiation, which they would have experienced on the moon. So my question is, who are the people still alive today which are carrying out this lie, which are saying, oh yeah, those suits prove that they've been on the moon? Who are the people today carrying out this lie?
I don't know, but those suits, even when you look at videos of the suits and you see a guy coming along and hanging it up, he grabs a hold of it and hangs it up on a hook with a whole bunch of other suits. If they weigh 42 pounds, go ahead and do that same move with 42 fucking pounds. You can't lift it like that. Okay? So we know the suit's not 42 pounds because that little guy doing that is putting it up on a hanger. And if you had 25 suits like that at that, the hanger he's hanging up is going to hit the ground, right? It's not going to be able to handle 4,000 pounds. You know, you see that, okay? But the official suit for Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong that you see in the photographs on the journal site, okay, do not have the whatever it is number of layers of material in them. The zippers don't do all the way up. Okay? The seals don't seal on those suits. So where are the suits that they wore that had the proper seals, that had a proper zipper, if they could make a zipper seal? Because those ones don't. Okay? Even the ring connector on there, they're quick release to take them on and off, but they don't have any compression against the seal. They simply do not work. Okay, those are the ones on display. Those are the ones that they put some dirt on and said that they were actually on the lunar surface with those suits. Okay, all you have to do is go and pick one up and see that it doesn't weigh the weight that it's supposed to weigh.
And not only
man,
that,
we just had a couple of assassins coming in onto the stream. We had Randy Walsh dropping in some truth. We had Mr. Scott coming in and dropping some truth bombs. This is awesome. This is what the people.
Yeah, but you see, Charles Duke would be able to talk to you freely because he actually experienced those things. He actually went out on the geological surveys. He actually practiced, and you could ask him straight out, where were they practicing? And he'd say Flagstaff, and then we'd know.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for people, maybe there's some people that are just coming in right now. We've got nearly 150 tuning in, which is a good little crowd. Thank you, everyone that's come out. But there's probably people that don't really know what we're talking about. What we're talking about is what we're focusing on, anyways, is the Danny Jones podcast. The Danny Jones podcast. I mean, the biggest podcast out there is obviously the Joe Rogan podcast. Bart Sibrel was on there, not I think about a year ago or so. Danny Jones is no Joe Rogan, but he has a large following. I mean, that Bart Sibrel, Charlie Duke podcast on YouTube already has near 700,000 views. On Spotify, it has nearly 300,000 views. So just those two platforms alone, they've got 1 million views. So it has quite a few eyes on it. And so what we're doing tonight, we're trying to break down the performance of Bart Sibrel versus Charlie Duke, what we liked, what we didn't like, and give our honest assessments. So I think it's food for thought. I think overall, even though I share the same sentiments that Randy just gave just a couple minutes ago, and he just came in scorched earth. I think overall it's good to get eyes and get people, at least get their gears going. Like, damn, that's a good point that Mr. Sibrel made regarding the moon landings. Now, there was other parts where I felt Bart Sibrel, like when he got pressed on, he couldn't remember where he got the source from. If you're going to go on these large platforms, you need to have it ready. You need to have it dialed in.
You have to be Marcus Allen, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
that boy has a memory
That's
unbelievable.
That's why I vote Marcus Allen as the president, and then I right beneath him Randy Walsh, and then I put Jared White as the Secretary of War. He's ready to get into it himself. But it's not a slight on Bart Sibrel. I don't want people to take it completely bad. It's just I feel there's better options in our community. And I hope people understand that. I hope people don't get triggered and get angry. But that's just me being honest. And I completely understand. I may be in the minority out there espousing this position, but I thoroughly believe we have better options that can better represent our positions. I feel Bart Sibrel he doesn't give us a good look, if I'm being honest. Now, I know Jara said he had a couple of things he wanted to address. What do you have to say, Jara?
Well, first of all, let me just comment on what Randy said earlier about the whole religion thing. Personally, as an atheist, if I was in the Apollo astronaut shows, even if I had done what I said I did, I would say, take that Bible home and come back with something I believe in. I'll swear on that instead, That's just me. I'd like to know how many of these astronauts they asked to swear in the Bible were even religious, So, I mean, if they're atheists, then it probably wouldn't even mean anything to them. But getting back to the topic of the Apollo samples of the rocks, there was a video put out by Simon Dan recently, which he responded to. There was this one section he responded to regarding the rock samples. This is a direct quote from Simon Dan. He says, "The isotopic ratios, lack of water alteration, micrometeoroid impacts, and solar wind implantation all distinguish them from Earth rocks." This is a feast of false statements. First of all, regarding the isotope ratios, he would be referring to things like the ratios of isotopes of oxygen, titanium, and silicon. Those are the most common examples cited. When they got the samples under the microscope and looked at these things, they found that those isotopic ratios were exactly the same as the Earth. So it doesn't distinguish them from the Earth rocks. And in fact, it was these isotopic signatures and supposedly the alleged lack of water, right, which led them to conclude that, the moon must have formed from a giant Mars-sized planet colliding with the Earth. You might have heard of the giant impact theory. The idea is that there was this Mars-sized planet that collided with the Earth and sent all this debris up into space that clumped together to form the moon. That theory relies on the rocks being made of the same stuff as the Earth, and also the rocks themselves being devoid of water, because any water should have vaporized in that explosion. That's sort of one of the reasons why there's this huge back and forth, all these discoveries of water found in the rocks. Well, obviously now they have to try to explain that. Okay, and obviously we discussed the water in those rocks earlier. And we also discussed the means of putting the samples in a particle accelerator to simulate the impacts from solar winds and cosmic rays and the like. But regarding the micrometeoroids, well, first of all, Bill Casing actually mentions this in his book. NASA has a light gas gun, a two-stage projectile system which can be used to simulate micrometeoroids. You know, usually in these simulations they would use things like aluminium pellets, but if you wanted to go for realism, I'd recommend using using actual micrometeoroids, which back in the 60s there were actually experiments to send up high altitude balloons and even sounding rockets. Specifically, I think they called it the Venus flytrap. It opened up, the nose cone opened up literally to collect micrometeoroids that were entering the atmosphere. You know, and obviously they got samples of those. If you were going to go to the trouble of collecting micrometeoroids from the upper atmosphere, you could potentially put those in the light gas gun and use that as your projectile to fire at your fake moon rocks. And so that's what I wanted to comment on regarding Simon Dan's section on the Apollo samples. Being the resident geologist of the group, I feel this is my field and something I am qualified to be talking about. You know, I've said this earlier, but I can't stress this enough, how much I wished I was on the program with Bart, you know, to address the things that Drew kept bringing up about the rocks. Watching it, I felt like I wanted to reach into the television and say, no, this, that, you know, just, you know,
It was driving me nuts,
said
man.
about that.
And I said this at the very beginning, like a lot of the people that criticize Bart Sibrel on the Danny Jones podcast YouTube channel, they were saying that he was aggressive and didn't let, you know, he was being unkind to Charlie Duke. These are the same people that were cheering on MC Toon when he has gone up against Mark Salin, Dr. Raza, you know, so it's hypocritical on many parts. Marcus Allen, we haven't heard from you in a minute. What do you have to say about these things?
I was just fascinated to hear what Randy had to say, what Gara had to say, what Scott had to say, because it's all real. This is all part of the discussion. It's a very big subject. And if people are coming to it for maybe the first time, they haven't necessarily got the details of it. Maybe we get into detail a little bit too much. It doesn't matter. You'll catch up. You'll get there. Read the books. There are many books available now if you want to read them. Go on to dear old Amazon, put in my name, you'll find a book there. The Apollo Moon Hoax, The Real Evidence. That gives you a bit of background to it all. Look at Jara's YouTube channel, moonfaker.com. Some of the stuff that he has been looking at there. His YouTube on Radiation Revisited, I think it's called. Quite a recent one, looking at the details of radiation. Because that is a question that is always being asked, it's never been answered. How do humans, not unmanned craft, how do humans, us delicate little creatures that we are, how do we survive in space, beyond the Van Allen belts? There's radiation all the way to the moon and back. How do we survive it? The Van Allen belts protect us on Earth from that radiation, as does our atmosphere. But out in space, we're unprotected. How do we ensure humans can survive that level of radiation? Never been answered. NASA claimed they're sending humans back to the moon. I think it's February next year. About 3 months' time, they're going to try and do it. Well, it may well be delayed through technical issues. The technical issues are the astronauts on that craft may well be asking, am I going to be protected from radiation when I go through the belts and beyond? When I orbit the moon, will I be protected from radiation? If they're not getting satisfactory answers, they're not going to go. There'll be technical delays, I suspect. But the idea that there are so many different subjects that we cover, it is quite hard even for us to keep up with them all the time because each of us has our own speciality. I mean, Raza has some remarkable information, and his discussions with dear old MC Toon were quite eye-opening. What Randy's doing in terms of providing technical scientific information about those famous F1 engines which powered the Saturn V rocket? Why aren't they using those for the SLS, the Space Launch System? No, they're using the old shuttle engines. They're a quarter of the power of the F1 engine, so they have to use 30 of them. Why isn't Elon Musk using an F1 engine? He could get his hands on one. Jeff Bezos dredged one up from the Atlantic. Got it working. Well, I assume he got it working, but does it do what it says? Does it produce 1.5 million pounds of thrust? Not the 400,000 pounds of thrust, which is the maximum power available today. There's something very strange about this whole Apollo stuff. That's why we're talking about it, because it all worked back in the 1960s, we're told. We saw it working. We saw the rocket take off, bloody great thing, shot up in the sky. 2 minutes after it launched, disappeared from sight. The only people who were giving us information was NASA. NASA, never a straight answer. Did they really tell us the truth? We had Charlie Duke, who was Capcom on Apollo 11, on Apollo 13. So he must know what he's talking about, we believe. This is the problem. We believe what he says. I went to the moon. I walked on the moon. You can't take that away from me, he said. We believe him. He's an honorable man. He wouldn't lie, would he? He signed his oaths of secrecy, as have all the astronauts and most of the people directly associated with Apollo. But if you start looking at the anomalies in Apollo, we haven't even discussed Apollo 13 yet, and the Russian involvement in Apollo 13, and the strange case of the floating command module, which the Russians fished out of the Atlantic, took it back to Murmansk and handed it back to America. It's now on display at the Grand Rapids Museum in Michigan. Why are the two command modules from Apollo 13 on display? The other one's at the Kansas Cosmodrome. Yeah. Jarrow's got the picture of it there. The lost Apollo capsule. It's a very strange story. It's never been addressed. There's something going on. There's something underneath the official story of Apollo 13, which we're gradually getting to grips with. We're finding the anomalies, the unexplained details, the unanswered questions. And they're there. And people who can look at them dispassionately, and maybe if you're American, it's very hard to look at it dispassionately because it's so much part of your history, your life story. It's what you believe America has done. You believe America has done it because you were told America has done it. But did they actually do what they claim to have done? Landed humans on the lunar surface and returned them safely to the Earth? That was Kennedy's challenge in May 1961. We don't see the evidence for it. That's the problem. So that's why we call ourselves Apollo detectives. Doesn't mean to say we're right about everything. I held up my piece of moon rock. Yes, many thousands of people have examined the moon rock. Who paid for the university time to examine them? It was NASA. They supplied the moon rock. They also supplied the Columbia River Basin rock and the Hawaiian rocks, and asked universities to compare and contrast these different rocks. Guess what? They found they came from the moon. But as Jared said already, Apollo 16 moon rocks contained rust. You can't have rust without moisture. How do you get moisture on the moon if it's in a hard vacuum? It would disappear. It wouldn't be in a moon rock. And vacuum is a major problem. It's not discussed. The many people who claim to support NASA, maybe even NASA themselves. I'm sure they're listening to what we're talking about now. Explain how vacuum, explain how astronauts are protected against vacuum in space. And the two problems with vacuum, outgassing and cold welding. They don't explain that. They don't discuss that. This is a major problem. And anybody who wants to read a quite amusing, excuse me, a quite amusing account of Apollo, check out Dave McGowan's Wagging the Moon Doggy on his. Dave McGowan has passed on now, but his daughter maintains the site. It's called Center for an Informed America. CIA. Get it? Ah, he's quite clever. Dave McGowan wrote a very, very good series of articles about Apollo. Wagging the Moon Doggy. Worth checking out.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Mr. Marcus Allen, the legend.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I truly believe that. And I've modeled my channel through the lens of David McGowan is what I call it. I view my reality, what we perceive as reality, through the David McGowan lens. And as little as my reach is, I make sure I try to give a shout out to Dave McGowan at all times to make people aware of his amazing work.
Yeah.
You know, he's been gone from us for a decade now. And so we cannot forget him. But I before I get to Scott, I want to definitely get your words on a couple things. I don't know if anyone here agrees with me, but the more I've thought about these shows that we've done together, and we've gone over the evidence time and again, I feel the smoking gun. This is for me. This is me speaking. I'm not speaking for everyone else here, but I feel the smoking gun is the F1 engines that Randy Walsh talks about. And the reason for it is extremely simple. If you don't have the hardware to get to the moon in the first place, why should you believe anything else? You know, Bart Sibrel was talking about the shadows, and Danny Jones started criticizing, well, you know, that could have been this or that. And you leave room for yourself. You open yourself up to these clowns telling you, well, you know, that's your perception. It could be perceived this and that.
Yeah, but we
don't want any of that. We don't want any of that. What we want is definitive stuff. If you can't produce the evidence for the hardware that got you there in the first place, you have absolutely nothing.
Yeah, but you know, Wheezy, along that same line, one thing that really bothered me about Danny, what he did was gaslit his audience when it came to those shadows, because I have taken that image, put it in the editor, and I allowed the editor to do some calculating on its own. There's a program you could run in the editor that will run lines and it will intersect or it won't intersect. You can do that in this editor. And when I ran that, those lines intersect. I'm sorry, but Danny's wrong. That rock is actually, it's not 90 degrees. It's not perpendicular to the other shadow of the astronaut, but they are going to cross. And Danny was sitting there saying that, no, they will not cross. Look at this. Look at the tripod in this other video. Well, the tripod, the shadow was going straight out. Of course, it's not going to intersect. But when you look at the rock, that is pretty much on a 90-degree angle. As a matter of fact, in the editor, it said 67 degrees by the time they intersected. So he is wrong about that.
I get that, Rob, but the issue, again, is you're leaving a little bit of gray area where one could say this or that. I completely agree with what you just said. I'm just saying, why don't we just scrap all that stuff completely? And we don't have to entertain it. Show me the money. If you can't show me the hardware that allegedly got you to the goddamn moon, you have nothing. It's really that simple. We make it more complicated than we have to. That's all I'm trying to say. Scott, what do you have to say? You've done 10 years of work in this. You are a pioneer in debunking the moon landings. What do you have to say, Scott?
Well, the spacesuits are exactly the same as the rocket. Throw a bunch of guys, put those suits on, throw them in Sandusky chamber. Okay? Let me run the controls. Simple as that. And that's not even close to the amount of vacuum that they're dealing with, right?
Yeah, it's really that simple. I think we haven't heard from Randy since he came in on fire. What do you have to say, Randy?
So I watched. I'll get back to the F1 engines in a sec because there's a couple of more points that I can add to that. So I watched Simon Dam's video, a critique of the debate last night, and I found it actually quite amusing. I always expect him to be, throwing his usual temper tantrum, which is what he does best, right? He doesn't really get into any meat and potatoes of the subject. He just gets angry and yells at the camera, and he thinks that's effective. Very much like what politicians do, because they're actually taught to yell in Parliament because they think by yelling, people are going to be convinced of what they're saying. So that's Simon Dam, right? So, the typical consummate normie. But one thing he did say last night, and I found amusing, was when I touched on this in my opening remarks, when Charlie Duke was asked about the Van Allen radiation belts, and he had to be actually instructed, number one, on what they were, and number two, how far the distance was, like how far out they went, like from 1,000 miles to about 30,000 or 40,000, depending on the source. And one of the things that they didn't even mention last night, and I'm not sure if Jared might have done some work on this, but the one thing they didn't mention last night was the atomic testing and the thermonuclear testing they did in space under Operation Fishbowl in 1958, 1962, respectively. So that wasn't even talked about. So let's just put that aside, because that's another barrier. That's more layers of radiation, right? But when I mentioned that Charlie Duke said, well, we never had any meetings about it because we weren't worried about it. And then Simon Dam had to own that. You see, this is what I mean. This is what I'm going to get back to in terms of the F1 engines. Simon Dam couldn't counter that point, so he had to own it. Well, of course, they didn't have any meetings about it because it was all done for them. So in other words, he was actually telling us that what Bart Sibrel tried to tell us several years ago is that we were just passengers. Right? And you can read into that multiple meanings. We were just passengers. Now, let me ask all of you and all of you who are watching, wouldn't you, if you were an astronaut and you were told that you were going through the Van Allen belts, what would your response be? Well, number one would be, well, I know there's a lot of radiation out there. Let's have a meeting, right? I want to talk about this, and I want to have another meeting. I want to make sure that we're protected. What kind of layering, what kind of radiation protection are we having? I mean, yeah, we're passengers, we're going through that, but I want to know what level of protection we have. What happens if there's a malfunction on our way through the Van Allen belts and we're stuck in there longer? What happens if the engine burns out? What happens then? What is our contingency plan? And I found it really revealing last night in the debate with Bart Sibrel that Charlie Duke would actually say what he said. And I'm waiting now for all the NASA defenders and astronauts to jump on Danny Jones' show to defend that remark, just that remark in and of itself, because it is a very telling, very revealing remark to say that, well, we never had any meetings about it. We never even discussed it, yet it was the most important barrier and most lethal, in some cases, barrier to have to go through in order to get to the moon. So that's the one point I want to emphasize. Going back to the F1 engines, I mentioned this in my opening remarks that the F1 engines, they were plagued with problems in Apollo 6. Now, Apollo 6, for the viewer that is watching, Apollo 6 was the second unmanned launch of the Saturn V to test the F1 engines. We were told that Apollo 4, not Apollo 5, Apollo 5 was not a Saturn V launch. So Apollo 4 and Apollo 6, two unmanned launches of Saturn V using the F1 engines. We were told that the first unmanned launch of the Saturn V worked perfectly. So all we can do is take NASA's word for it because they've destroyed all that telemetry. So we'll never know for sure. But let's give NASA the benefit of the doubt. But they couldn't hide the fact that there was a disaster happening on Apollo 6 because you had photos that got through the media. They got through the sensors, got through the filters, right? So you have a plume of smoke and with a flame coming out of, I believe, is the first stage near the second stage of the Saturn V before it reaches altitude of 40 miles, which is when it would have jettisoned the first stage containing the F1 engines. And that plume, that fire plume indicated kerosene was burning. And that's another thing. That's another key point that Charlie Duke couldn't remember last night when he was asked what kind of fuel were they using. He said, oh, I don't know, liquid something. It was liquid oxygen and kerosene. And kerosene was the only time kerosene was used was in the F1 engines. And that's why Apollo 6 is a very bookmark Apollo 6. For everyone watching here, bookmark Apollo 6. Go look at the photos because that plume indicates that kerosene was burning, which means that the cooling system of the F1 engines was breaking down. Now, having said that, NASA claims that they rectified that problem. They fixed the F1 engines. And 7 months later, they put a crew on board without any further testing of the F1 engines, either on the ground, static testing on the ground, and or in flight. Those engines were not tested. I defy anybody to tell me any technology of that nature, that level of sophistication. You go look, read up on the F1 engines. It's supposed to be a very sophisticated piece of machinery. I defy anybody how any mechanic or any engineer or anyone can sign off on making repairs without doing any further testing and just putting a crew on board for the first time.
Hey, you know, Wheezy, I just had one quick, interject. One comment from the comment section on the channel, he was saying, where are all the rocks that were collected for the Apollo trips that they went to the Canadian Shield, to Flagstaff, to Hawaii? Where are all those rocks and where can we find them? Are they in museums? Are they stored somewhere? Does NASA have them? Because we don't know where they are. I just thought I'd throw that out there. It was a good question that he asked. I'm going to look into that a little more.
Well, and according to Charlie Duke, he couldn't even tell you exactly how much, if it was 200 pounds or 600 pounds, which is part of that Danny Jones podcast. We haven't heard from Dr. Raza in a minute. Dr. Raza, what do you say?
Yeah, coming back to this rock thing, because this also comes back to the question which Jera asked Buzz. So Jera was asking Buzz about the petrified wood, but Buzz's reply, he was actually replying to a different question. He was replying to the question about what happened with the mismatch of all the other rocks. So if you go to like Wikipedia, it will say that where are the moon rocks today, and they'll say a lot of them were lost, and so or mixed up and things like that. And so that was the question which Buzz was actually replying to. He's like, "What happened after we gave the rocks away? I don't know what happened because that's not up to me." So he was replying to that question, not specifically the moon which was given to the Dutch Museum, the petrified wood. He wasn't even. I think Jera was way ahead of his time to ask that because Buzz hadn't even heard that story yet. But if you don't mind, I wanted to throw in a couple cents about this Bart Sibrel interview. If you could pull up that link, actually.
What link? Hey, Jared, can you mute your? I could hear the fan in the background, please. What link, Dr. Raza?
I put it in the chat, just a couple of comments up.
Oh, okay, I got you. Where do you want me to?
So I just wanted to say, actually, I'm actually quite a big fan of. I'm supporting Bart on what he did, and the reason why I support Bart is. Well, before I get to that, let me just read this. It says the House on Un-American Activities Committee. I can't read it, but it says created in 1938. Am I right?
Yeah, established in 1938 under the Martin Dies as chairman, that conducted investigations through the 1940s and 1950s
at the very bottom,
communist activities.
At the bottom, it says it was taken apart in 1969. It changed names. and then it was
its influence waned by the 1960s. In 1969, it was renamed the Internal Security Committee, and in 1975, it was dissolved.
okay. So this was called the House. What was the anyway? It was the House Committee on Un-American Affairs. So what that
House
right.
Un-American. So Un-American Activities Committee, and the, let's see, HUAC. That is wild.
Okay, so what happened is this. The reason why I'm showing this is because these are the people which freed Bart Sibrel after he was put into prison. So within the CIA, there's two factions. There's the Christian faction and the Freemason faction. And these two factions have been at war for a long time. And that House Un-American Committee started in 1938, represents this Christian faction. And so it was the Freemasons in the CIA who captured Bart. And then it was these Christians from that House Un-American Committee which came in and freed Bart. And that movement is still going on today. So what I want to say regarding Bart, and actually regarding anybody, we all have, as Marcus was saying, each one of us has our own differences, our own specialities, and with everybody here, there's going to be certain points we agree with and disagree with. But for me personally, I don't care about any of that, because I know for a fact that soon enough NASA will admit that they lied, and it doesn't matter who represents us or who's better at convincing people, because it's only just a matter of time before the whole world knows. So I don't need to choose a representative. I don't think anybody's my favorite, and because by the time the truth comes out, we'll just all be looked at as the pioneers. We were ahead of our time. And so the little differences between us and that, and who said this and that, it doesn't matter. We're all just ahead of our time, and people will wonder in the future how we knew what we knew before it was officially admitted.
There you go. Gerald, we haven't heard from you in a minute. What do you got to say? You're muted.
Off.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. I wanted to comment on the things that you said about there being no discussions for should we avoid this part of the radiation or that part of the radiation. The fact that he says there was no discussion about what we should do to avoid it, it seems kind of odd, because Michael Collins in his book claims that back on the Gemini program there was discussions to try and avoid the stuff. Here he's writing about Gemini 10. Now, it's just for some context here. On Geminis, they would dock with a booster rocket called the Agena. The Agena would fire and then basically boost them into a higher orbit. Okay, he's writing here about the Agena that they dock with on Gemini 10. He says, "I must also keep one eye on the clock being the counter of the of how long the engine's been firing for, and if the engine doesn't shut down on time, I will immediately command it to shut down, because we don't want to go any higher than planned, mainly because it will foul up our timing of our strategy and for overtaking the Agena 8, and also because it would put us deeper into the Van Allen radiation belt." It's important to note that Gemini never went higher than the South Atlantic anomaly. The Gemini 10 never went higher than the South Atlantic anomaly. So here he's saying, I got to make sure that the engine shuts down on time, and if it doesn't, I got to shut it up, or we'll end up in the Van Allen belt. So it seems odd that there would be obvious discussions about that. He even says here that they were expecting the medics. They were predicting doses as high as 19 rads for the radiation he would have encountered in the anomaly. This was, of course, before they knew that the anomaly, once you're outside the anomaly, you have time to do some healing before you're exposed to it again. But still, they were talking about what the medics were predicting, and obviously needing to shut down if the engine doesn't shut down in time. So it makes you wonder, well, why would there be discussions on Gemini but no discussions on Apollo? That doesn't seem to make any sense.
Because Apollo knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't going anywhere near the Van Allen belts, because no human has been past the Van Allen belts.
Well, you got to be able to get off the ground first. I was just sitting here thinking about what Charles Duke had said about meeting von Braun. Now, why the hell, given the fact that the astronauts were the most famous people in the world, why wouldn't von Braun want to talk to these people? He said he was introduced to him, and that was it.
I think I have your answer right here. Hold up, Scott. Let's listen to this.
I went to the moon.
I understand.
We picked up moon rocks.
Was
Oh my God.
That's it about cover it, yeah.
That encapsulates the whole 4-hour podcast. What is your biggest proof we went to the moon? I went to the moon. I picked up some moon rocks.
Yeah, but don't.
Sorry,
don't you find it,
Scott. That was a small little joke.
Yeah, don't you find it interesting that the most famous people in the world, nobody wants to talk to them? Were they were they keeping the Apollo rocket such a secret that the astronauts didn't know what was happening with them?
Yeah,
I mean, that seems what's going on, because like if you're not talking, like von Braun's the head engineer on the machine you are going to be flying in, okay, and he said he was privileged that he was able to meet him once.
Yeah.
And then they set up a thing. Then they set up a thing, and they went to an update thing with a bunch of engineers or whatever.
Yeah.
And the engineers said everything's okay, like you don't need to be here, right? But there was no details on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if
Well, the other thing right there, touching on that same point, Scott, was when I think it was Danny Jones brought up, how did he feel about when he first landed on the moon? And it was just so generic, and he just glossed over it.
Oh, he wasn't excited.
Danny Jones wanted to get some kind of reaction, like, "Oh my God, it was so amazing! I saw this and I saw that. I could see the stars and all their bright and shine. It was an amazing." And he was like, "I was happy."
That's the same as the takeoff. Weren't you excited? He said, "No, we rehearsed it so many times. It was just like the other rehearsals."
Yes. And then the other thing Danny Jones did bring up was and it was because of Bart Sibrel, was when they showed the interviews after Neil Armstrong gets back, Buzz Aldrin, and they look like ghosts in that interview. Like they're scared and nervous. And Danny Jones told Charlie Duke, like, that's kind of weird, right? And there was no answer for that. But yet, when Charlie Duke goes to the moon, he was happy, very generic, happy, no details. That was something that I don't know if a lot of people caught, but it was very telling for me, at least. What do you think, Scott?
Well, I just think when he made that comment, we, jumped off the rover and let's go get those rocks. I mean,
200, 600 pounds, something like that.
You are in a foreign environment. Okay? You don't even know what kind of rocks you're looking for. You don't know what you're going to find because nobody has been there before. Okay? And they just went, let's go get those rocks. Sounds to me like they were at Flagstaff, jumped off the rover, and they're at Station 6, and let's go get the rocks. That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, you're out there. You don't even know your next step. You might fall in a crevice, right, that could be covered with lunar dust. You have no idea. Okay? You have no idea that you might strike something very sharp and cut your suit wide open, and you're instantly dead. These guys didn't express any of that. They never have. Charles Duke didn't do it as well, right? There was no concern for his safety at any God-given time during his conversation. And that's from liftoff to landing, stepping on the moon, or running around on the rover. Didn't come across. Didn't sound like he was there at all.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's I get kind of bothered when I read some of the comments from the normies, the people that still ascribe to the myth. and they make fun of people like you and I that question it. I'm like, look, the evidence is on our side. And one of the things that Danny Jones brought up at one point was he was trying to press Bart Sibrel on showing more evidence. And Bart Sibrel, rightfully so, said, no, wait a minute. The onus isn't on me. It was NASA that claimed that man landed on the moon. And I think that's the approach we need to start adopting. This whole thing that we need to prove their lie is ridiculous. That's not how it works. And I think, I don't know, I'm pushing for a movement that we need to start taking that. This whole crap that we need to prove it. When they can't even show us these F-1 rockets, it doesn't make, it's stupid. It's to our detriment if we don't tackle it that way.
I wanted to say something about Charlie Duke. You know, in one of the first time I appeared on this Apollo Detectives many years ago, I brought up a Charlie Duke quote. And on what happened was on his mission, if you look at the timestamps and all the if you look at the timestamps and all the things that the astronauts said on Charlie Duke's mission, while he was like coming towards the moon, he made a quote that said, you know, when I look out the window and I see this thing, it looks so fake. So I would have asked Charlie Duke about that. What do you mean by that quote? It looks so fake. He was actually toying around with whistleblowing here. That would have been the question I would have asked Charlie Duke. Why did you say that it looks so fake? Were you trying to blow the whistle here? He knew that you see, the thing is, you know, he knew that he couldn't blow the whistle too much, or else he would have ended up like a Gus Grissom. But I think there was chances where all of them kind of toyed around with pretending to blow the whistle, but they all knew they shouldn't, or they'd end up like Gus.
Yeah, I would have constantly pressed him on the whole. Every time he brings up the moon rocks, I would have just, what about this? What about your rust? Okay, what about the rust in the rock samples? That shouldn't be there. I would have jumped down his throat on that. You know, of course, I would have probably explained it diplomatically as best I could. Of course, even if I know or strongly suspect somebody is lying to me, I always, you know, like to see how they handle that question. And it's very, like I said, I wish to God I was on that. I'm an atheist. I'm wishing to God that I was on that program with Bart. You know, basically to discuss moon rocks with Duke.
Hey, Jared?
There was one occasion.
Jared, I'm just going to ask you something. What do you really think Neil Armstrong meant when he said we must remove one of truth's protective layers? What do you think he really meant when he was referring that to those newbies that were going to be entering this program?
I never gave it too much thought, but it seems like a good tip of the hat to the next generations. I found it interesting as well. If you actually look at the full interview and stuff, he says that we've expanded our knowledge of the universe 1,000-fold, and yet somehow the moon seems to be the one destination in the solar system that we seem to have just paused on, because there wasn't many subsequent missions to the moon, not until the 90s, anyways, when they had those orbital flights, and but of course, you know, a lot of it was based on the moon rock studies, and a lot of the samples have to be reanalyzed now in light of all the findings of water in there, not just
But that's not really a protective layer, though. What does he mean by one of truth's protective layers? There must be something hidden within the program if he's mentioning it.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Because, you know, I spoke to Bart a lot about this, and Bart, after he did what was the movie where he got
Anything Happened on the Way to the Moon?
No, the other one.
Astronauts Gone Wild.
Astronauts Gone Wild, right? So what happened is, after Astronauts Gone Wild, he kind of tried to keep in touch with some of the astronauts. And I'm not supposed to tell parts of his story, but one of them has to do with keeping in touch with Neil Armstrong. And as I mentioned, the reason why Neil Armstrong made this thing about one of tooth's protective layers is because Neil Armstrong was the only Christian in the bunch, and he did have some regrets about that, and Bart actually spoke to him personally about this. And so there's more to this story which I can't tell, but this is one of the reasons why I personally became involved in this in the Chinese space mission, is because it confirmed some things which I had. Let me just complete that story, because I've told this before, but when I first met the Chinese Space Agency, it was 2016, and they asked me if I wanted to work for them, and I said no, I'm not interested in space. But then in 2020, 4 years later, I came back to the space agency and said I would work for you. And part of the reason for that is because Bart Sibrel confirming some things which I had heard from the Chinese Space Administration, and he had heard from Neil Armstrong. So this is just my personal story, and you can take it with a grain of salt as you wish.
Can I ask you this, Dr. Raza? This is one thing I wanted to ask you. So he's been on Danny Jones, Bart Sibrel has. He's been on Joe Rogan. And not once has he ever said your name. He says, I have a friend that works for the Chinese Space Agency. And as your friend as well, Dr. Raza, that has pissed me off. I think that's bullshit. He's on these massive platforms. Why doesn't he give you your respect that you deserve? This is my feeling. I know it's probably unpopular, but I think that's wrong. You should, I modeled my show after David McGowan. Anytime I get a chance, I give respect to David McGowan for inspiring me, even though he's been passed away for 10 years, because he has inspired me. Bart Sibrel been on Joe Rogan, the largest podcast in the world, and all he can say is, I have a friend that works for the Chinese Space Agency. I think that is utter bullshit. And excuse my language, but it pisses me off because I think that's wrong. And so that's how I feel about it. And I just thought, why hasn't he given you respect, Dr. Raza?
Let me just say, you're totally correct in saying that in order to get on the Joe Rogan show, you have to be connected. You're totally 100% correct in saying that. And, I even asked, and even coming back to Danny Jones, in order for Danny Jones to get Charlie Duke on his show, he has to be extremely well connected, So, all these things, this is a whole nother world, and I'm not part of this connected world. And that's for a reason, they don't want my name to be known at all. And I'm okay with that. Like I said, for me, it's all this truth is going to come out soon enough, and we'll all just be looked at as ahead of our time. So like I said, I can tell you my story, and I don't care how many people believe my story or not. In the end, you'll see that everything I said was true.
It's interesting that you mentioned about Neil Armstrong being religious. So I was just sitting here thinking, his funeral, was it a baptism? Wash his sins away, throw him in the ocean? Just a question.
Wasn't there also something funny with his wife going on?
Well, she was the one who put the ashes overboard into the ocean, the urn. I showed that in the videos, the last couple
Like
videos.
he's buried at sea.
That's right. Yeah, I showed her tossing the urn overboard, the ashes. Yeah.
But wasn't there something later that happened to his wife after he passed away? Where
I don't know.
You remember
I think
that?
she died a few years back. It was a couple of years ago, I think, when
please-
she died. I can't
please-
remember the date off the top of my head.
I think we should wrap it up because Marcus is
Yeah, we've lost Marcus.
showing his age.
He's
So we should-
he's
Yeah.
dreaming about picking up moon rocks. Oh man, bless him. This is we should wrap it up. We can't go on and then just have it.
By the way,
I
Wheezy,
love
He's waking up.
Wheezy,
I
Wheezy,
love
when
it.
you,
Marcus Allen has woken up from his
yeah,
slumber.
there he is. Okay, when you get a little older, like we're all getting, you end up you go in and see the doctor, and he says, I have I can get you a prescription for Viagra. And you get to a certain age and you say, what do I need that for? He said, so you won't roll out of bed.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that was awesome. I loved it. How
I-
are you,
I
Mr.
know a good
Marcus
joke
Allen?
about that.
Are you okay?
Yeah, we're doing just fine. We should call it.
Yeah.
It is getting late, and it is a
It's
Sunday.
getting late for Marcus, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Well, it's 9:30 over here in the UK.
Yeah. But it's rainy.
Yeah. Oh, it's probably raining. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, before we go, shout out to Paul Francis. Thanks for your contributions. And you know about the photographs, don't you?
there you go.
He's somebody I know in the UK. He's been
Okay.
commenting.
Sir Marcus Allen wakes up and starts giving shout outs. That's freaking
Yeah,
awesome.
good stuff. That.
I love it. Absolutely love it. That was
Well-
a lot of fun, guys. I thought we covered a lot of ground. It is late for Sir Marcus Allen, and out of respect, and it is a Sunday, a rare Sunday show. I want to thank everyone that made it out. I want to thank Robert Williams, always being exquisite. I want to thank Jared White, the great and legendary Marcus Allen, Randy Walsh, author of several books on the moon landing hoax, Dr. Raza, my homie, Mr. Scott, 10 years and going on strong on reading the documents regarding the official moon myth. And so you can find them at the Apollo Detectives on YouTube channel. They're also on Rumble, so give them a follow. I have their Rumble link on the description. So it's important to follow people that you enjoy on several platforms in case one channel gets taken down. You have their backup. So follow them on YouTube, but follow them on Rumble as well, and let's build those channels up. Gentlemen, thank you. That was a lot of fun. I thought we hit all the points that we could do, and it was entertaining. I really enjoyed it. I hope everyone has an exquisite weekend. Next week, I will be doing the last show of the year. I want to go over a year-end review as well as some milestones that we hit this year. And that could be my last show for a while. I'm going to take some time off. A lot of stuff going on, but I want to thank everyone. I hope everyone has a fantastic Christmas, gets everything that they've that they've wanted, and enjoy your family, enjoy your friends. This is what it's all about. Whether you're a believer or a non-believer like myself, it's the season. Get in that feeling. You know what I mean? Enjoy who you have around you, and that's all we can do. All right, y'all. Everyone, take care. Hugs, loves, and kisses.